What's up, Retrievers? I know you love that slogan. Listen, if you are a current UMBC family member who is considering grad school or wondering if you should consider grad school, have we got a episode for you? That's right, you. Okay? So over the next several minutes, we are going to be exploring whether or whether not I should go to grad school or you should go to grad school, right? How do we make that decision? And then if we decide that grad school is for us, we're going to be discussing and exploring how to select what program is the best fit for you. And then how do I develop and cultivate a strong application package? So if you're interested in that, trying to figure it out, you're in that process, I want you to tune in to the next several minutes with Dr. Rowena Winkler. That's right, doctor. Who better than somebody with 3 degrees and who was a former professor to give you the insights and the inside scoop on all things grad school. Check us out.
This is UMBC Careers Unleashed, where we unleash stories, insights, and expertise to support you on your career journey. Let's dive in.
What's up, Retrievers? We are back with another episode of your favorite career podcast, UMBC Careers Unleashed. And today we have an esteemed guest who is also a friend of the pod and a returning co-host, right? This is not an interviewee. This is a co-host.
Ooh.
Let's bring in my co-host and colleague, Dr. Rowena Winkler. Let's put some doctor on that thing. Hey, Rowena.
Hello. I'm so happy to be back. Wait, how many folks have been on the pod twice? Is it a very small number?
If there's some folks, I think it's been, okay, so Melissa,
Okay.
Michelle, and Mary Kate.
Okay.
So it's
all acceptable. That's fine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Isaiah, our original, the
Oh,
original.
how could we forget Isaiah? I mean, Isaiah's just on another level.
Exactly.
Yeah. But okay, that's fine. I'm very delighted to join the club.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So today, we're going to be centering in on something that I think you know oh so well for so many reasons, right? And we are talking about the road and journey towards grad school.
Yes.
Right? So this is like for the folks who are considering grad school, who maybe feel like grad school is necessary, given their, career aspirations, or maybe their major requires a next level, or maybe even some people who don't want to go to grad school but have been told that they should, that they can figure out whether or not, right?
Sure.
So you know how we like to do on the podcast. We like to kick it off, or at least at some point in the episode, have a career controversy.
Okay. I'm ready.
All right.
I'm ready.
So let's get ready. Right.
Right.
We know that college tuition is not a cheap thing.
No.
So with tuitions going up and increasing, right? Some would say that employers care more about skills than degrees. So with that being said, do you feel like that grad school is still worth the investment?
This is a really great controversy to talk about because you're absolutely right. The way trends are hitting when it comes to the job market, when it comes to, education just being so much more expensive and funding being a lot harder to come by these days. However, I will say, and I'll probably answer several of your questions today with this.
Okay.
I always bring it back whenever a student brings these questions to me. What's the end goal?
Okay.
Right? What do you intend to utilize the master's or the PhD or whatever degree you're looking to get into? What is it? Why are you getting it? What is it for? If the degree is a necessity to do the work that you want to do, if it's needed to get the specialization, the expertise, the training that you need to do the work that you need to do, if you need it to get a promotion in the work that you're already doing, I think those are all very valid reasons to go to graduate school. So I think it's just a matter of having a conversation and really reflecting on what you plan to do career-wise in the next, 5, 10 years. I've also met with students who, like you said in your intro here, right? Well, my parents said I should go to graduate school, or my professor thinks I should go to graduate school, or I don't know what to do, so maybe I should go to right? So in those instances, I might ask the student to maybe pause and think a little bit more, because as I always say, grad school is hard. It's hard work. It's an investment, not just a monetary investment. And we talk about tuition, right?
Right, time.
But there's ways to get around that, which we can talk about. It's time.
Yeah.
It's energy. It's, if you're moving across the country to go to a program that makes sense for you, right? There's a lot of things that play into the mix here. So you best know that that's what you want to do. If there's any inkling of a doubt, any hesitation, I would say maybe take a gap year at the very least and just hold off and see. In my own experience, I went through and got all my degrees all in a row and came out of there without any industry experience. But once I moved into the industry, I was able to leverage my time and my degree, my PhD, as a way to get a higher salary, move up quickly in a management role. So I think it's a matter of what are your priorities at the time, right? Because some students maybe, and we talked about this before recording, some students need to take a break and can't be jumping into grad school right off the gate, right?
Okay.
And that's totally fair and fine. Some students want to, I know for me, I went straight through because I was okay being poor for a long while. As a grad student, and then I was able to work, but there was time that elapsed, right? While I was getting my degrees, folks that I went to college with were, getting promoted and buying houses and having children, and I did not meet any of those life goals while I was in grad school, right? So there's a give and take, as
That's
with
true.
anything.
That's true. Okay, so let's say if there was a litmus test.
Okay.
Right? Because you're saying that it depends.
Yeah.
And you're giving some context around how if you pursue that other things may be on hold. Or if you go the opposite way, that maybe your entry point, your salary command could potentially be less than someone who has an advanced degree, right? Okay, if there was a litmus test, right, that someone came into your office, what would you walk them through, or what would you share with them to say, okay, do I need to go to grad school? Like, is this something that needs to be on my immediate next steps list, or can I hold off and see if I need to go at all? Like, what would be that litmus test?
Yeah, I mean, I would advise students to, hopefully they have an idea of what they want to do with or without the degree.
Okay.
Without the grad degree, right? So what's the end goal?
Yeah.
What's the role that they want to go into after they graduate with their bachelor's? I would then advise them to look at job descriptions and see what are the requirements, and is a master's degree one of them, right? If they keep running across these job descriptions that keep requiring master's degrees or master's level work, then that's probably a good indicator that if you want to do that type of work, it's time to go to graduate school. So I think that's one litmus test, or one way to do some research.
Our student population and constituency, the majority of our student population are undergraduate students. However, right, if someone is tuning into this podcast and they maybe went into the workforce and now they are coming back to acquire additional skills, then maybe you could say something to them, right? I don't know. But you know what, though? I will say that for someone who is coming back, right, to academia as a student, pursuing a graduate degree on whatever level, right, a master's degree or a PhD, I think that there is a level of findings that they have, right?
Right.
Because it is not necessarily a part of like the natural trajectory. They had to make that intentional decision.
Right.
So it may not necessarily be, we may have some things later that might be a thing for them. I think that folks who've been in school since they were probably 4 years old, and they're like looking at their wrist, like, when is the the timer going to ding. I think that those are folks who are more probably like concerned about that. What do you think?
Yeah, the one thing I will say, and this has been a surprise to some students that I've met with in my one-on-one appointments, is let's not forget that if you do decide to work versus go to school right away, that depending on the degree and the employer, your employer could potentially pay for your master's degree. That there is a reimbursement piece that comes into the negotiation phase of salary, right? So if you get a job offer, that could be something that you could negotiate, is asking for, is there, tuition reimbursement opportunities? So that's just something I'm throwing out there because a lot of students don't realize that. And they're like, oh, right? Because they feel like they just have to go. But they could work and see if they show an interest in a particular field that ties into what they're doing at the job, that could be the case. Now, I will say with a lot of those kinds of tuition reimbursement programs, there are stipulations, right? Like you must work for us for a certain number of years. So you can't just get a degree and then bounce after you get the degree that's paid for by them. But I feel like, to have your master's covered for, I think that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah. Okay, so before we get out of like decision land, like should I go or should I not go? Because I think that we're going to take a veer into if that's where I'm headed.
Okay.
How I should prepare. But before we get out of decision land, can we talk about how going right in as opposed to waiting, how it can be advantageous? Can we delve into that, right? Because I've got some ideas, but I want to hear from your perspective. If you do just sail right in, right? Like you're nervous, you've been in school all these years, but if you just grab the proverbial bull by the horns, and go in there, what are some things that makes that advantageous?
Oh my gosh. I was able to get my bachelor's, master's, and PhD in less than 10 years. Like, it's got all of it
out of the way.
It was all done, and I witness friends, my own husband, right, was in grad school while working full time, while having a young family. That's really hard.
Yeah.
So for me to be able to just go straight through, I loved school. I was already used to the routine. I wasn't working full time. I was able to just focus on school full time, and that was my job, was school. So I was able to dedicate all that time, and I think because of that, I was able to finish much quicker than friends and colleagues who are working on their dissertations, for example, while trying to balance a lot more life stuff.
Yeah. And so you're saying that taking that break gives time for, not saying that it couldn't happen while you were in grad school, but it shifts your focus a bit and it gives space for life to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And so then having bills and, responsibilities, whether you start a family, and then trying to do that while having the course load could potentially be. And I know that firsthand.
I know you do.
I know that firsthand, whereas your classmates are having study groups and I've got to like hurry up and rush because, someone is watching my small child and I've got to get back and do nighttime routines and get someone up for school or daycare. So I think that is a real thing. It's like that, though you may be over school, like when is it okay, but having that fluidity does allow you to be able to like
it was just a seamless transition. And honestly, the scary part was leaving, was finishing and going into the real world, was like, how do I do that now? So I think it just, I was able to zip through quickly.
Yeah, especially for those who are like lifelong learners, the scholar person who's like, that's what I know how to be good at school. And like transitioning out might even be scary for them.
Yeah.
So like when you think about, you're saying, maybe you should take a gap year, what are some of the ways that someone could leverage a gap year in a way that's like productive?
Yeah, so I've met with students who are pre-med, for example, right? And so they plan to take a gap year to get more experience volunteering at the hospitals or maybe conducting more research or, working in a lab or, things like that, ways to get more hands-on experience. Maybe, for example, if someone is looking into a PhD program and wants to take a gap year, maybe they're still working closely with a faculty member on a publication, right? So they can have something on their CV when they apply to PhD programs. Because I know it's a little more challenging for someone straight out of undergrad with a BA to go into a PhD program. So a lot of the students that I've met with who are interested in going that route want to really build their CVs with experiences that can make them just as appealing as someone with a master's or someone who has a little more experience leading to the PhD.
Understood.
Yeah.
And CV is, for the folks watching at home, it's very much like a resume, but it's more geared towards your academic accomplishments. It does include some of the things that you've done in the workspace, like internships and that, but it also has a lot more more heavily focused on what have you done academically. So like the research, or if you have, served as, taught anywhere,
right,
or what publications are you a part of? So just throwing it out there, because folks might be like, well, what is a CV? So,
they should watch, what is it, the first episode?
Yes, about the, yes, beyond the resume.
Beyond the resume.
Beyond the resume. I was hearing something. I also want to speak to folks who maybe have this burning desire to join the Peace Corps.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Or they may be a neuroscience major, they may be majoring in business technology, but there's a part of them that has a desire that may be non-conventional. And before they get formally in their career path, they may want to do something with their lives that, maybe speaks to that, that altruism. So like the Peace Corps or AmeriCorps, or if they have, just this wonder and they want to visit a country, And so I think that those things, while they may not be linear, they still are valuable.
Oh, absolutely.
And they could be also added to a resume or CV as well.
Oh, yes, 100%. For sure. And I think that's also those kinds of experiences I feel could fit well into a personal statement, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's great. I'd be great experience.
And what's another term? Our transferable skills, right? Like that makes you then an atypical applicant for grad school, an atypical, person who may be pursuing, right? Because it's like, okay, if you're a computer scientist, but you spent, 2 years or a year, in a developing country, helping to build roads and infrastructure, that's
really cool. Yeah.
Okay. So let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
So let's say that grad school is the thing.
All right.
It's a part of the path. What would you say to someone who is earlier on in their collegiate journey, like first and second year? What are the things, the little breadcrumbs, the Hansel and Gretel breadcrumbs that they should be picking up along the way as they're kind of going through undergrad, if grad school is even a thought?
One of the things that I speak to students about in my one-on-one appointments is, so when a student is first building out their resume and doesn't have any internships or any work experiences, and they're working toward that, right? Oftentimes we suggest utilizing course projects as a way to demonstrate some knowledge that you're doing things in the area. What I say to students, especially when it comes to grad school or even industry work, is being intentional and strategic with course projects, right? So if you're in a women and gender studies class and you're looking to go to grad school to study like feminist literature, I don't know, I'm just making this up. Maybe if you have a paper that you need to write for that particular class, pick something in the arena of which you want to study for graduate school. So then you could show that you've done the work in those courses before you even do it in internships and things like that. The other piece, especially here at UMBC, is that it can be challenging for students to get research experience working in labs and working with faculty here, right? There's no easy one-stop shop way. And so oftentimes students need to reach out sooner than they think they have to, right? I met with a student who emailed professors. They didn't have any openings, but they did have an opening a year later. And then she was able to get that experience. If she was a senior and doing that outreach, game over, it would be too late. So I think students should reach out to faculty that they feel that they could work with, they want to learn from, that aligns with their research interests sooner rather than later, so that hopefully they can get a spot and put that on their resume.
Those are gems. If you're a first year or second year student that you have not come across the professor whom teaches the class that's like the bedrock of like what you really want to do yet. And so it's just, you're saying that when you get to that place, don't delay.
Yes.
Like seize the moment, then like talk to the professor, try to build a rapport with them or whatever.
And I've heard that word of mouth does well too with research opportunities because students have talked to friends who've worked at labs. So make friends in your major, in your area. Maybe find friends that are a little older than you that study what you study, so that you could get the good word.
And this also is then a plug to also a former episode too for academic advisors, because those folks, especially if they're in your area, if this is your major advisor, that they also have an insight around like the full scope, right? And it's like, these are the things you should consider, and they can serve as like that co-pilot.
Yeah.
In the vein of talking about professors, which you are a former.
I'm a former.
Yes. I know one of the things that folks initially don't think about, a lot of times don't think about, and then when it's time to ask a professor for a letter of recommendation, that they are like full of nerves in some cases. Maybe because they had the professor 2 or 3 semesters ago.
Right.
Or maybe because they felt like a small fish in a big pond. Like, do they know me? Right. So can you speak to that? Like, what are some of the things that can help in both scenarios? Like, as you approach and go up towards, like, how can you like be proactive about that? And then if you are the person, on the other side who's like, have to reach back 2 or 3 semesters, can you speak to both folks?
Yeah. So I would say that if, let's say, right, this is a student who know their go, right? That grad school is it. This is the path. If they know and they feel very drawn to a faculty member, feel like they would be a great person to write a rec letter for them eventually someday. I always find it helpful for students to come see me in office hours, because sometimes before class, after class, that time is very rushed, and it's like, oh, okay, I gotta go. Like, faculty have office hours to meet with students. And I feel like those office hours have not been utilized enough. At least when I was a faculty member, there were days no one would show up. But the students who did show up, the students who did come to my office to share with me what they're interested in, what they aspire to do, what they need help with, those are the ones that stuck out in my mind. I clocked it. I said, okay. And so when it was time to write a letter, it was very easy to write a letter. So that's one way. Participating in class, just making yourself known, because if you're the quiet one in the back of the classroom, I'm not gonna, I'll probably know who you are. I'll see the name, but I won't have as much of a, my letter probably wouldn't be as personalized or as
like substantive.
Substantive. And I know that there are folks that are shy and are shy to speak out. So maybe it is, I don't know, maybe it's just sending a quick message just to say, thank you for the content. You just find ways to just make yourself known to the faculty member, so that you're not just a
that was a gem. You glazed over that, but that was a gem. Like, for folks who are not necessarily as comfortable in person, to then send an email of encouragement, to make themselves known that way. That was a gem. Like, thank you so much for this, and maybe like ask a thought-provoking question about their research or something, and that way you don't have to be like, doctor,
right.
Like you can. Yeah. I like that. I was thinking of something, and I'm trying to see if it can come back to me. I'll do something else, more formal, okay. Right? For the folks who maybe the time and semester
time has gone.
Yeah. one of the things that I like to share with folks, even if like you're removed, like even if you graduated and then,
Yeah.
and like email is so tricky.
Yeah.
Everybody has different email etiquette. Like some people need some more time to respond. Some people may not respond.
True.
But one of the things that I find is, especially if there's more distance between the student and their time in front of that professor, is giving the professor all the information that can help them to be successful. So initially asking them, would you be willing?
Yeah.
And then if you are, what would you like me to provide you with so that you can then do this, right? Like, and you maybe attach your resume at the beginning.
Yeah.
Maybe you, whatever they ask you for, but maybe you might say, I've attached my resume, for your consideration, if that jars your memory or whatever. So like setting them up for success.
Right.
I think that also kind of helps folks.
Yeah. I quite literally had this conversation with an alum yesterday about reaching out to faculty, and gave the same advice. Also said to provide the context of how they might know you, just in case if it's been a couple years, you just say, "Hi, Professor so and so. I'm so and so, and I was in your fall 2023 XYZ class," right? Just because I know for me, when I've gotten those emails in the past, I've had to go back to the files. I'm like, who's this person? Do I remember you? What was your grade? Like, I've had to do some research on the back end to try to see, like, okay, should I write this letter?
Yeah, you know what? And you saying that brings back to me what I slipped my mind. And that is the encouragement that I always give folks, that people are people. Right? Like you have kind of demystified that. You've like let the cat out of the bag a little bit. Like professors are people.
Right.
And insider thing about, Stephanie, me, is that I like to, in my mind, create a scenario that makes the person who I might be nervous about engaging with more human. And so I'm a little bit petty. So I might be like, you know what? I guarantee you that Dr. Winkler has had spinach in her teeth before. That for me helps me to be like bold, like the way that I'm seeing myself small.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, look, if Dr. Winkler has had a piece of spinach in her tooth, okay, and walked around and people saw them, like, I can send them this email. How do you figure out, like, okay, I want to become a clinical psychologist,
right?
Or I want to become so my major was psychology, and there are many routes, right? So this one might be become a clinical psychologist, and another one wants to become a counseling therapist, right? Like, okay, how do I figure out, not that huge of a scope, that's a big scope, but like, how do I figure out if I am wanting to become the clinical psychologist? Like, what's the program for me? Like, it's all of these options, they got this school and that school, school, and a school. Okay. How do I figure that out? Like, what are the things that I need to do?
Let's back up a bit, right? So before we even get to selecting the right schools or the right program, it's like, what's the right area or the field of study, right?
There you go. Okay.
So for me personally, something that was super helpful was my mentors. I mean, my mentors all throughout my life, but especially in this instance, because when I was in undergrad, I had a faculty member who took the time to mentor me, teach me research methods, send me to conferences, told me about the University of Maryland College Park, where I ended up getting my degrees, right? I had someone there who was able to guide me. So, find some mentors,
right,
if you're able to. Yeah, find your people that can help you with that. Number two with that is where we go into the, cue the Career Center resources section of this conversation, where we have a lot of different resources, at least on our end, that can help students figure things out. So a couple of things. Number one, we have our majors resources site. So these are for all the undergraduate majors. There's a web page that lists a PDF of what can I do with this major. So that can help you figure out like what's an area you want to go into. There's a web page there that's what can I do with this major. That gives you some strategies on if you want to expand in the major, if grad school's even in the mix there, whether it's worth pursuing in this particular field, right? Like clinical psychology, some really good resources there. Another resource that I've mentioned to students is the Bureau of Labor Statistics occupational handbook. Because then they could look up, okay, how much does a clinical psychologist make? What's their median salary? What's the growth trajectory of this field? Do I even want to do this? Right? Especially if you're like on the fence, you can kind of see, okay, is this actually a field that's growing or is, tanking? So that can help make your decision. I'm trying to think. Oh, we also have a resource called Stepping Blocks, right? Where you can look up majors as well as just job titles. And you can look up what education you need or what education goes into that, what your average salary is, what are some top companies in that field, and what do other people in that field do? Like, how did they get to that point? Which actually I think is very helpful because you basically see the path of a person who's a clinical psychologist. You can see exactly where and when they got, not when, but where in the journey they got that master's, if they got a master's. Because I find it helpful to look at others before me.
Yeah.
And that was the other piece I was going to mention, is finding someone who's in it or who does it. Right? So finding UMBC alum, right, through our resources like Retrievers Connect.
Absolutely.
And there's plenty of PhDs on Retrievers Connect, as we both know. So finding someone on Retrievers Connect who has that degree that you can talk to. So again, it's the networking piece. You think the networking is just for industry, but that's not the case. I think the data collection and the info gathering can just as well come from networking with people at those programs so that you can figure out if that's what you actually want to do.
I love that. I love how you are very technical and intentional around like strategy. I, being a person who like leads with the heart a lot, I'm like, where is it? Is it, am I comfortable in that place? Like, does it take me out of the city? Is that where I want to be? How is that going to challenge me to grow? Is it in the North? Do I want to be in the North? Is it in the South? Do I want to be in the South? Right? Like, a lot of folks who are interested in the medical field may end up in Georgia at Vanderbilt. A lot of folks who are interested in, other disciplines may find themselves in Boston. Right? And so like, are these the things, these the places that I want to be? Right? Is this the culture? Is this the place, and maybe, or am I willing to, for the sake of this program, willing to live in a cold place, right? Which is a great bridge now to my next question. A lot of times, just like if it were fashion, we are drawn to, some folks are drawn to labels, right? Or the name. From your perspective, does the name and reputation of the graduate program, like whether in person or online, Ivy League or state institution, right? And I mean, we all have our perspectives on that, but from your perspective, right? Adding your, we are naming you as the expert. What value does that hold?
Yeah, so when it comes to online programs, honestly, I feel in a post-COVID world, it's fine. I think there are definitely folks out there that are old school and more traditionalist. And I'll admit, I was probably one of those people, a couple of years ago myself, before everything has changed. But now that we conducted work and business and school, like we did everything online when it had to happen. So I think it's totally fine and
like
legit.
The proficiency and the quality has probably improved.
I mean, these programs have been doing it for years, and I'm sure now they have even more resources or more insight to set them up for success. So I do not poo-poo the online programs. I have relatives who've gotten online master's degrees and they do very well. So so I think it's totally fine. When it comes to selecting a program, I think it's more than just the ranking of the school.
Okay.
I think that if we're looking internally at the program, I think what's going to be a better experience for you is to ensure that that program has faculty, mentors, and advisors that can guide you in the research trajectory that you want to pursue.
Yes.
Because just because you're going to such and such Ivy school name, if there's Ivy League school, if there's no faculty member that knows what the heck you want to do and won't be able to guide you with your research, you're just going to have a hard time.
Yeah.
It's just not going to set you up for success. So whenever it comes to selecting programs, it definitely, I think it helps to see which faculty are doing the work. So look at the citations of the papers you're writing. And if you like their research, see where they're at and see if they're available to take on an advisee. Because, so going backwards and kind of looking at the references.
I would ring it. I would ring it. That is a insider thing right there.
Yeah.
The folks who are writing the papers, publications, books that you are reading.
Yes.
The one,
Yes.
let me give you a high five right now.
High five.
That was not it. All right. Yes. That was good.
Yeah. Because that's clearly you are drawn to their work. You love their expertise. So why not try to go for that, right? Try to go for those folks. But then at the same time, and to your point about location, I think those things are equally as important, if not more so, in my opinion. All the lifestyle things that, it's funny, I was talking to a student about this yesterday. I think students, especially our undergrads, right, they're so tunnel vision focused.
Okay.
That they don't broaden out the scope of but wait, what's my life going to be like in this city? If I'm single, could I potentially find a partner? Could I find friends? Does this politically align with my values? Right? Just thinking about those.
Boston is the most expensive, or maybe not anymore.
Right,
but
cost.
It's
right.
Cost.
Yeah. All those lifestyle things are going to, right. Am I going to be eating ramen for my whole grad school career? Or am I going to live out in the Midwest where the cost of living is great, but there's no water around, right? So those sorts of things, because again, with the mental health piece, right?
Yeah.
If you're not feeling safe and happy in the space and environment through which you're studying and getting your degree, it's just going to make it so much more harder. If you feel like you're in a space where you don't feel like you could be accepted as you are, or if you feel like you're in a space where you don't feel like you can find companionship or friendship or just a nice colleague, I don't know, that's important to me. And I feel it should be important for a lot of people.
What are the things that you believe the committee or review boards on? And I mean, every school is different, but what are the solid pillars that when we're putting our application package together, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to accomplish?
So I'm going to touch on this first because we already, I think, touched on this a little bit earlier, is the recommendation letters, right?
All right.
So here's and because I feel like I've been saying this lately to the students I've been meeting with, so I'm going to say it out here so that everyone has these tips. So when it comes to the rec letters, right? Before you ask for rec letters, have your short list.
Okay.
Because then what you do is that you write down all the details on a document, a nice document that says the name of the school, the name of the program, the deadline for the stuff, maybe a nice link so they can look at the program if they so choose, right? So giving all the details of each program that you intend to apply to and giving that to the faculty or to supervise, whoever's writing your recs, give that list to them all in one go and say, hello, thank you for, and this is after they've agreed, right? So don't just send it.
Right.
After they agreed. So you give them the list and say, here you go. These are the programs I'm applying to. Here's the deadlines, just in case, so you'll have the heads up. Because usually how it goes, right? You submit on the application portal and you put the contact info of your rec letter writers and they ping them with an email. So it just gives them a heads up, we got one coming.
Right.
Here we go. Because, I mean, let's be real. usually it's the same letter written across.
Yeah.
You just change the name of the school and da, da, da. So it shouldn't be too much work for the letter writer, but it's just really nice to just have it all there so that they're not getting all these disparate messages and emails and being like, what, how many schools is she applying to?
Right.
Just making it nice and easy breezy for our wonderful mentors who are writing these letters for us.
So we got that.
Yeah.
So that's the thing to kind of like ground the person who's writing your recommendations.
Yeah.
Then outside of the recommendation, what we typically see, what do we see? What's like the application process? It's the recommendation. It's what else?
And the big one that I'm sure you know, because we both do these types of appointments, is the personal statement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's either personal statement or a statement of purpose. Similar-ish, an SOP or a statement of purpose is much more academically focused. It's much more focused on what have you done in your research, what have you done in school, what have you done to prepare you for this program. A personal statement, as it says, is a little bit more personal. So you can add more flavor. It's an opportunity to share a narrative about you and what brought you to this field of study. What are the experiences in your life that led you to want to pursue graduate study and why you're a good fit for the program. And that's where you bring in Dr. So-and-so that you want to work with that was on that citation and such class because you looked up the curriculum, right? Like there are things like this that you can show, okay, I've done my homework. I know what I'm getting into. I want to work with this faculty member. And hey, look, I'm a good fit because based on my story, I'm really passionate about this field of study and I really want to be here.
Yeah.
So it's and I will say that's a general template of it. There are also moments where a school has a prompt that's like more specific to what they want to see. It's generally the same kind of gist. I haven't seen anything too far-fetched. When I was applying to graduate schools, I did have a personal statement prompt where I had to write an autobiography of myself. That was very strange. A little bit out of the norm. But usually it's the same. But that's the number one thing is making sure you answer the prompt. So if they want you to write an autobiography, I said it was a cold night on March 6th. You know, I don't know. I was... Apparently, I guess it worked. I don't know.
Yeah. I've seen also a new emerging one is like a diversity statement.
Yes.
I think that what kind of connects them all is that no matter what the starting point is like what makes you unique, right? That might be the diversity one. The personal statement is what makes you unique as well.
Yeah.
And then the statement of purpose is still within like academics. It's like, what is your unique take on, things? It is like demonstrating your fit.
I actually have a pro tip from one of my mentors, good old dear Dr. Michael Hunt, the director of the McNair Scholars Program. He brought up at our Grad School 101 event earlier in October that if they don't require an official transcript, just give the unofficial because official ones cost money. That's a good one, right?
That's a good one.
I know.
Right, because you may have to pay for the application. We want to pay for transcripts and applications.
Right.
And here's another thing. I want to humanize having challenges too, right?
Yes.
If there was a semester, if there is a GPA that you have at this point that is not necessarily your shining star,
right,
that you can use your personal statement, that you can leverage your letters of recommendation to also create a narrative, right?
Yes.
Maybe it is that you started out as one major because of the, advice of someone and it wasn't a good fit for you and you were reluctant to change. And it wasn't until halfway through your sophomore year that you decided to kick into gear and really pick something that you can own.
Right.
And you mentioned that.
Yeah.
And now that gives narrative to how, maybe you had this bump in the road and then halfway through your transcript, all of a sudden you see this thing. But what I would encourage our listeners to do is to, if you've made it this far in the podcast, to at the conclusion, take a breath, take a breather, and like mull these things over. And then if there are things that are resonating or that you didn't quite catch, come back and watch the episode again, right? And if still, after maybe trying to pop back into certain parts of the episode, you still have a level of confusion, of course, the Career Center is here as a resource. We are going to link in the show notes some of the resources that you talked about, Stepping Blocks, Retrievers, Connect. But there's also inside the Career Guide a tool. And it is about decision making. It's in the earlier portion of the Career Guide. And I don't know the exact page, but year over year, the page numbers change anyway. But it is in the exploring your options section. So it's earlier, it's closer to the front of the book. And there's like this scoring thing to help you walk through. I think there's 2 of them, but it's one for your values and then one for like next steps, where you can actually score. These are the things that are important to me, and these are the options that I have, and you can give them numerical values. And I feel like for folks who need that more concrete thing, that might be also a tool that you can definitely use, right? So take a deep breath, absorb the things, and then if you still need something more concrete, the tips that we talked about, the resources that we talked about, but definitely that tool inside of the Career Guide where it helps you to evaluate that might be something for you. So I hope that this episode helps. This is a big topic, but we care for you. We're here for you, of course, in the Math and Psychology building on the 2nd floor for now, right? We may glow up and get our own building. I don't know.
Maybe.
But we care for you, and peace out.